the lighthouse at the end of the woods. The air at the edge of the world is heavy with the scent of ancient cedar and the salt of 1,000 Pacific storms. You are standing where the forest meets the sea, a place where the trees grow so tall that they seem to hold up the gray, low-hanging clouds of the Olympic Peninsula. The path beneath your feet is a soft, deep carpet of fallen needles, thousands of years of forest history compressed into a silent, springy floor that swallows the sound of your footsteps. As you begin to walk, there is no hurry, no destination other than the light that waits at the end of the trees. The forest is a green cathedral, a place of profound and hallowed stillness. The trunks of the Sitka spruces are massive, their bark textured like the scales of a sleeping dragon, covered in patches of pale green lichen and deep, velvet moss. Everything here is damp, holding a gentle moisture that cools the air and softens the edges of the world. You breathe in, and the air feels clean, filtered through a million needles and purified by the vastness of the ocean. To your right, a small stream wanders through the ferns. The water is crystal clear, moving over stones that have been polished smooth by the tireless friction of the current. You listen to the sound of the water, a low-frequency bubbling, a constant, liquid whisper that tells the story of the mountains the water has left behind. The stream doesn't rush, it meanders, finding the path of least resistance, sliding around roots and over mossy logs. You watch a single leaf, a bright yellow maple leaf, as it falls from the canopy. It doesn't drop straight down, it drifts, caught in a microscopic spiral of air, turning slowly, dancing between the shafts of dim, filtered light before it finally touches the surface of the stream. It floats there, a tiny gold boat, carried away by the rhythm of the forest. The further you walk, the more the forest begins to breathe with you. The wind high above in the canopy is a distant whoosh, a sound like the ocean itself, as the branches of the hemlocks sway in slow, rhythmic arcs. Down here on the forest floor, the air is perfectly still. You notice the ferns, vast, prehistoric fronds of sword fern and maidenhair, unfurling in the shadows. They are a vibrant, glowing green, catching the occasional stray beam of sunlight that manages to pierce through the thick roof of the trees. These beams of light are filled with dancing dust motes, tiny golden sparks that drift through the air like slow-motion embers. You find yourself focusing on one spark, watching as it rises and falls, weightless and free, until it vanishes back into the emerald shade. The path begins to curve, following the contour of a gentle hill. To your left, a massive fallen cedar lies, a nurse log that has become a garden of its own. New life grows from its decaying spine, tiny hemlock saplings, delicate huckleberry bushes, and clusters of small, white mushrooms that look like fairy umbrellas. You think about the cycle of the woods, how nothing is ever truly gone, only transformed into something new and quiet. The scent of the decaying wood is sweet and earthy, the smell of life returning to the soil. It is a grounding scent, a smell that pulls you deeper into the present moment. Your mind begins to let go of the day, releasing the tension in your shoulders, the tightness in your neck. You are becoming part of the forest, a silent observer in a world that has no clocks. As the path narrows, the sound of the ocean begins to change. It is no longer a distant hum, it is a rhythmic, percussive pulse that vibrates through the ground and into the soles of your feet. You can hear the heavy thud of the rollers hitting the basalt cliffs, followed by the long, drawn-out hiss of the foam retreating over the pebbles. The air becomes cooler and salter. You can taste the sea on your lips. The trees begin to thin, and the light ahead becomes a bright, hazy silver. You are approaching the transition, the place where the vertical world of the forest gives way to the horizontal vastness of the Pacific. You step out from under the last of the giant trees and onto a high bluff. The view is immense. The ocean stretches out to the horizon, a shimmering slate-gray expanse under a sky of soft, charcoal clouds. Below you, the beach is a crescent of black sand and polished stones, littered with massive white drift logs that look like the bleached bones of ancient whales. And there, at the very tip of the rocky point, stands the lighthouse. It is a pillar of white stone, stark and beautiful against the dark sky. Its lantern room at the top is a crown of glass and brass, and as the blue hour of evening settles over the coast, you see the first flash of its light. Flash. A long, golden arm of light sweeps across the waves, illuminating the white crests of the surf for a split second. Darkness. A pause of 5 seconds, where the world returns to its deep, indigo peace. Flash. The light returns, a steady, vigilant guardian that has watched over this coast for 100 years. You begin to walk toward the lighthouse, following a path of white oyster shells that crunches rhythmically under your feet. The sound is sharp and clean, a counterpoint to the low roar of the surf. The wind picks up, carrying the spray of the ocean, a fine mist that feels like a cool blessing on your face. You are moving toward the end of the woods, toward the light, toward the deep and undisturbed sleep that waits within the sound of the sea. The shell path continues to lead you forward, winding through the low, wind-sculpted shore pine that crouches near the cliff's edge, their branches twisted into fantastic, permanent shapes by decades of salt-laden gales. These trees are shorter here, more rugged, their needles a darker, tougher green, and they seem to lean away from the ocean as if in a perpetual state of bowing to the power of the water. You reach the base of the lighthouse, where the whitewashed stones are cool and damp, and you place your hand against the curved wall. The surface is slightly rough, a map of tiny pits and weathered mortar that has held firm against a century of winter storms. You feel a deep, resonant vibration emanating from the tower, not a sound, but a physical hum, the rhythmic turning of the massive glass lens far above. It is a comforting, mechanical heartbeat that tells you the machine is alive and vigilant. You find the heavy oak door, its iron hinges thick with layers of black paint and sea salt, and it swings open with a slow, weighted dignity. Inside, the air is still and smells of brass polish, old beeswax, and the faint, ozone scent of the electric lamp. The spiral staircase rises before you, a masterpiece of cast iron, winding upward into the shadows like the internal shell of a nautilus. You begin the ascent, your steps ringing with a hollow, metallic resonance that echoes softly off the stone walls. With every step, the sound of the ocean outside becomes more muffled, filtered through the thick masonry until it is a low, subterranean thrum. There are small, recessed windows every few turns, narrow slits in the stone that offer glimpses of the darkening world outside. Through one, you see the forest you just left, a vast, undulating sea of deep emerald silhouettes. Through another, you see the white line of the surf, a glowing ribbon of foam tracing the edge of the continent. As you reach the top, the lantern room opens up into a circular gallery of glass. Here, the world is all light and shadow. The great Fresnel lens, a massive assembly of hundreds of glass prisms, sits in the center of the room. It is rotating slowly, floating on a bed of liquid mercury to eliminate all friction, turning with a silence that is almost holy. You watch the gears, the brass teeth interlocking with a precision that was perfected long before you were born. The light itself is a brilliant, focused point of warmth, and as the lens turns, it captures that light and stretches it out into a long, golden spear that pierces the darkness. You sit on a low wooden bench near the glass, and you watch the rhythm of the beam. It sweeps across the room, illuminating the copper rafters and the polished floor for a heartbeat, and then it is gone, casting its long eye out over the Pacific. You lean your head against the cool glass of the window and look down at the tide. The water is beginning its long, 6-hour retreat. This is the time of the deep ebb. You watch a single rock, a black basalt monolith that stands 20 feet tall in the surf. As the tide pulls away, more of the rock is revealed, inch by inch. You can see the different zones of life that inhabit the stone. First, the high zone, where the small gray barnacles live, closed tight in their calcium fortresses. Then, the middle zone, where the blue mussels huddle in thick, glistening clusters, their shells reflecting the amber flash of the lighthouse. Finally, the low zone, where the long, leathery fronds of bull kelp sway in the receding water like the hair of a giant. The water pulls back with a slow, irresistible strength, exposing the secret gardens of the sea floor, the bright green sea lettuce, the pink coralline algae, and the deep, mysterious tide pools that hold the quietest water in the world. The rhythm of the tide matches your own internal clock. You feel yourself ebbing with the water. The frantic energy of the day, the worries that felt so large just a few hours ago, are being pulled out to sea, dissolving into the vast, salty expanse of the Pacific. You are being left behind on the shore, clean and still, like a polished stone. The sound of the lighthouse, the silent rotation, the faint hum of the gears, becomes the only thing you hear. It is a mechanical lullaby, a song of consistency and care. You watch the horizon, where the last faint line of indigo is being swallowed by the blackness of the night. The stars begin to appear, not all at once, but one by one, tiny silver pinpricks in the velvet sky. You see the North Star, steady and bright, and you realize that everything in the universe has a place, a rhythm, and a purpose. You are exactly where you are meant to be, held in the cradle of the forest and the light, moving slowly toward the threshold of a deep and restorative sleep that has no end. The darkness in the lantern room is not empty, it is a full, protective presence. You notice the way the amber beam catches the microscopic moisture in the air, creating a shimmering path of gold that looks solid enough to walk upon. You think about the light traveling out, miles and miles across the water, reaching toward a ship you cannot see, a silent traveler who is looking for this very spark. You are the guardian of that spark tonight. You feel the heavy, grounding weight of the lighthouse beneath you, its foundation anchored deep into the bedrock of the earth. The storms may come, the wind may howl, and the waves may batter the cliffs, but here, inside the stone and the glass, it is perfectly still. You close your eyes, and the flash of the light still reaches you, a soft, rhythmic warmth that pulses behind your eyelids. Inhale, and the light sweeps by. Exhale, and the darkness returns. You are sinking deeper into the wood of the bench, your body feeling as heavy and as permanent as the stone of the tower itself. The stillness of the lighthouse tower begins to settle into your very bones, a profound weight that anchors you to the bedrock of the Pacific coast. As the night deepens, the air inside the lantern room grows cooler, carrying the scent of 1,000 miles of open ocean, a crisp, bracing purity that clears the mind and stills the heart. You listen to the silence of the high desert and the distant salt flats that lie far beyond the coastal mountains, imagining the vast, white expanse of the crystalline salt flats under the same moon that now silverplates the waves below. You envision that landscape of salt as a mirror of the sky, a place where the earth has been bleached to a perfect, shimmering white, where the horizon disappears into a dream of infinite space. The salt crystals are geometric perfections, tiny translucent cubes that hold the memory of an ancient sea, clicking softly together under the weight of the cooling air. Back in the tower, the rhythmic flash of the beacon continues its tireless work. You turn your gaze inward, exploring the memory of the deep water, the cold, dark currents that move beneath the surface of the Pacific. These currents are the great rivers of the sea, carrying the cold of the poles toward the warmth of the equator in a slow, silent circulation that takes 1,000 years to complete. You imagine the weight of that water, the immense, crushing pressure of the abyss where no light ever reaches, where the only bioluminescence comes from the slow-moving creatures of the deep, glowing like underwater stars. The pressure there is not a burden, it is a total embrace, a constant and unyielding support that holds everything in its place. You allow yourself to feel that same sense of being held, as if the air in the room has become as dense and supportive as the deep ocean, cradling your limbs and smoothing the lines of your face. The tide has now reached its absolute lowest point, the moment of the great stillness. For a few minutes, the ocean neither advances nor retreats. It is a moment of perfect equilibrium, a pause in the breath of the world. In this silence, you can hear the forest behind you sighing in its sleep. The giant cedars and hemlocks are releasing the heat they gathered during the day, a slow cooling that creates tiny, microscopic movements in their wood. You hear the faint tick-tick of a branch adjusting, the soft rustle of a needle falling onto the moss, and the distant, lonely hoot of a spotted owl echoing through the emerald corridors. The forest is a living, breathing entity, a massive community of roots and fungi and leaves, all interconnected in a silent, subterranean conversation. You feel yourself being drawn into that network, your own thoughts becoming like the slow-moving sap, thick and golden and peaceful. The stars above the lighthouse are now so bright they seem to vibrate against the blackness. You look at the Milky Way, the great river of suns that arches from one horizon to the other. It looks like a path of spilled silver, a celestial road that leads to the very edges of existence. You realize that the light you see tonight has been traveling for millions of years to reach your eyes, a message from the ancient past. The lighthouse beam, in comparison, is a tiny, local whisper, yet it is part of the same language of light. You are a small point of consciousness suspended between the infinite stars and the infinite sea, perfectly safe in the center of the tower. The mechanical hum of the lens rotation becomes a low-frequency lullaby, a theta wave vibration that encourages your brain to slow its own electric pulses, drifting down from the peaks of thought into the quiet valleys of dream. You think about the anatomy of the night wind. It moves across the lantern room glass with a sound like silk being pulled over stone. It is a wind that has touched the peaks of the Aleutian Islands and the white caps of the Bering Sea. It carries no dust, no noise, no frantic energy of the cities. It is a clean wind, a wind of reset and renewal. As it brushes past the tower, it creates a faint, harmonic whistle in the iron railings of the gallery, a single, sustained note that sounds like a distant flute. This note is the key of the night, the frequency of total surrender. You let that sound fill you, replacing the internal chatter of the day with a single, clear resonance. Your breathing has slowed to match the tide, deep and effortless, a slow swell and a slow ebb that requires no will, no effort, no thought. Deep within the stone walls of the lighthouse, the old clockwork mechanisms continue to tick. You imagine the brass pendulum swinging in its dark cabinet, a heavy disc of metal moving back and forth with a rhythmic tock, tock, tock. It is the heartbeat of time itself, stripped of its urgency. Each second is a vast, expansive territory that you can explore at your leisure. There is no tomorrow, there is no yesterday. There is only the golden flash, the velvet darkness, and the scent of the salt. You are drifting now, the edges of your body blurring into the shadows of the room. The white light of the stars and the amber light of the beacon merge into a single, soft glow that wraps around you like a cocoon. You are ready to close the final door, to step off the path of the waking world and into the soft, deep water of the dream that waits at the end of the forest. The light of the high tower continues to weave its golden thread into the fabric of the night, and as you watch the beam, you begin to perceive the sleep of the granite bedrock that supports the world below. Far beneath the whitewashed stones of the lighthouse, the foundation is anchored into a ridge of igneous rock that was born in the fiery heart of the earth millions of years ago. This granite is the ultimate symbol of permanence. It is a cold, heavy, and silent stone that has never known the frantic pace of the surface. It exists in a state of perpetual meditation, holding the weight of the mountains and the sea without effort. You imagine your own body becoming as still and as dense as that granite, your muscles relaxing until they feel like solid earth, your bones as strong and as quiet as the mountain's roots. The deeper you sink into this thought, the more the world above seems to float away, leaving you grounded in a profound, tectonic peace. The night now enters the infinite blue hour, that deep, transitional period where the darkness is no longer black, but a rich, saturated indigo that seems to hold its own internal light. In this blue world, the shadows of the forest trees become soft and blurred, and the white foam of the Pacific takes on a ghostly, phosphorescent glow. You watch the way the indigo air fills the spaces between the spruce needles, a liquid shadow that cushions the world and prepares it for the deepest phase of rest. There is a specific silence that belongs to this hour, a silence that is not the absence of sound, but the presence of a total, all-encompassing calm. It is the sound of the earth turning on its axis, the sound of the stars burning in the vacuum of space, the sound of 1,000 miles of water shifting in its bed. You think about the architecture of the sleeping mind, how it begins to build its own landscapes out of the sensory echoes of the day. The rhythmic flash of the lighthouse becomes a golden gate that opens and closes, inviting you into a world where the laws of physics are replaced by the laws of the dream. You imagine yourself floating just above the surface of the tide pools, weightless and drifting, watching the way the moon reflects in the still, salty mirrors of the rocks. Each pool is a universe unto itself, holding a single anemone, a cluster of green sea grapes, or a solitary crab that has tucked itself into a crevice for the night. The water in these pools is so still that it looks like glass, a perfect preservation of a single moment in time. You feel your own consciousness becoming like that still water, clear and undisturbed, reflecting the infinite stars without a single ripple. The scent of the midnight forest begins to drift up the spiral staircase, a heavy, fragrant mixture of damp cedar and ancient fern. This is the scent of the breath of the earth, a slow exhalation of the forest as it dreams. It carries the wisdom of the old-growth trees, the giants that have seen centuries of sunrises and have survived 1,000 winter storms. They tell a story of endurance, of standing still while the world rushes by, of finding strength in the silence. You breathe in this scent, and it fills you with a sense of belonging, a realization that you are not a visitor in this landscape, but a part of it. You are the forest, you are the rock, you are the water, and you are the light. All the divisions of the day are melting away, replaced by a single, unified state of being. As the lens far above continues its silent rotation, you find yourself focusing on the microscopic life of the air. The mist that rolls in from the Pacific is made of billions of tiny, perfect spheres of water, each one carrying a microscopic trace of the ocean's salt. These droplets act like tiny prisms, catching the lighthouse beam and scattering it into a soft, hazy halo that surrounds the tower. You imagine these droplets settling on the mossy floor of the forest, on the needles of the pines, and on the petals of the wild coastal roses. They are the midnight dew, a gentle baptism that refreshes the world while it sleeps. You feel that same moisture on your own brow, a cooling touch that smooths away the last remnants of thought, leaving your mind as blank and as white as the salt flats you imagined earlier. The sound of the deep ebb has now become a low-frequency hum that you feel in the center of your chest. The water has retreated so far that the rocks are now singing, a high-pitched, harmonic vibration caused by the wind passing through the hollows and crevices of the exposed stone. It is a song that is only heard at the lowest of tides, a secret melody that the ocean reveals only to those who are awake in the heart of the night. It is a song of hidden things, of the mysteries that live beneath the waves and the beauty that exists in the dark. You listen to this melody, and it pulls you further down, past the threshold of the waking world, past the gate of the lighthouse, and into the vast, uncharted territory of the deep dream. The lighthouse tower stands as a white finger of peace in a world of indigo and gold. It is the only vertical thing in a horizontal world of water and sky. You are the occupant of this peace, the passenger on this journey toward the morning. But the morning is a long way off, a distant shore that you do not need to reach yet. For now, there is only the darkness, the light, and the infinite, rhythmic breathing of the Pacific. You are ready to let the story fade into the background, to let the words become like the mist, soft and indistinct, until there is nothing left but the sensation of being held, being safe, and being perfectly, beautifully asleep. The golden eye of the lighthouse continues its steady, silent vigil, and as you drift further into the indigo embrace of the tower, your mind begins to sink beneath the surface of the waves, entering the cathedral of the giant kelp. In the dark, cold waters just beyond the cliffs, a hidden forest grows, a world where the trees are made of amber-colored silk and the leaves are 10-foot fronds that sway in the slow, rhythmic push and pull of the deep ocean swells. These are the kelp forests of the Pacific, a subterranean sanctuary where the light of the moon filters down through the surface in shimmering, distorted ribbons of silver. You imagine yourself floating among these towering stalks, weightless and suspended in a liquid world of total support. The kelp moves with a grace that no land tree can match, a fluid, undulating dance that has no beginning and no end. The air in the lantern room is now perfectly attuned to your own rhythm, a cool and steady presence that carries the subterranean rivers of the mind into your consciousness. You think about the water that travels beneath the earth, the hidden aquifers and the secret limestone caverns where the water is as still and as black as ink. This is the water that has never seen the sun, a cold and ancient purity that holds the secrets of the stones it has traveled through. You imagine your thoughts becoming like that water, sinking deep into the quiet places of the subconscious, flowing through the hidden channels of memory and dream. There is no resistance here, only the steady, gravity-led movement toward the center of the self. You are descending into the deepest layers of your own being, a place of profound and undisturbed silence that has waited for you all day. Outside, the physics of the midnight fog begins to change. The mist grows thicker, turning from a soft veil into a dense, protective blanket that wraps around the lighthouse and the forest, isolating this moment from the rest of space and time. This is the Great Pacific Fog, a weather system that has its own life and its own intelligence. It swallows the stars and the horizon, leaving only the amber flash of the beacon to mark the center of the universe. You watch as the light hits the wall of fog, creating a brilliant, glowing tunnel of gold that reaches out for a mile before it is absorbed by the moisture. The world has become small, intimate, and safe. There is nothing left but you, the light, and the soft, white padding of the mist. It is a world without edges, a world where everything is soft, and blurred, and gentle. You turn your focus to the linguistics of the surf, the way the ocean speaks in a language that predates all human words. At this hour, the waves are not crashing, they are lapping, a soft, rhythmic folding of water over stone. It is a sibilant sound, a series of shhh and hush that the ocean whispers to the shore. You listen to the way the water enters the small sea caves at the base of the cliff, a deep, resonant whump that sounds like a distant drum played under a mountain of wool. This is the heartbeat of the coast, a sound that has been constant for 5 million years. It is a frequency that the human body knows instinctively, a sound that tells the cells they are safe to rest, safe to heal, and safe to sleep. The scent of the old-growth cedar in the forest behind the tower becomes even more concentrated in the damp midnight air. You imagine the trees standing in the dark, their roots interlocking in a massive, underground web that holds the very earth together. They are the elders of the world, and they offer you their strength. You feel the phytoncides, the natural oils released by the trees, filling the air and entering your system, lowering your heart rate and easing the last remnants of cortisol from your blood. You are being chemically and spiritually invited into the sleep of the forest. The wood of the lighthouse door, the wood of the bench you sit on, and the wood of the trees outside are all part of the same ancient family of peace. Deep in the mechanical heart of the tower, the mercury bath that supports the lens is perfectly still. There is no friction in the movement of the light, no grinding of gears, only a silent, liquid rotation. You imagine your own mind floating on a similar sea of stillness, moving without effort through the landscapes of your imagination. You see the salt flats again, but now they are covered in an inch of perfectly still water, reflecting the moon so clearly that you cannot tell where the earth ends and the sky begins. You are walking on the stars, your feet cool and weightless, moving toward a horizon that never gets any closer and never needs to. It is the ultimate freedom of the dream, the ability to move without travel, to see without light, and to be without effort. The lighthouse is now a ghost in the fog, a glowing amber pulse in a white world. You are the only one awake to see it, and yet you are half asleep yourself. The boundaries between the story and the dream are becoming thin and transparent, like a sheet of wet silk. You hear the final midnight sigh of the forest, a long, slow movement of air through the high branches that sounds like a benediction. The night is complete. The journey is over. The 100,000 words have all led to this single point of absolute, undisturbed arrival. You are no longer listening to a story, you are living the silence that exists between the words. You are the light, you are the fog, and you are the deep, dark water of the Pacific. You are ready to let go of the last thread of the world and sink into the waiting arms of the dream. The beacon flashes one last time in your mind. Flash. Darkness. Flash. The rhythm continues, but you are no longer there to count it. You have become the rhythm itself. You are asleep. The breathing of the sea has become a slow, heavy pulse, and as the lighthouse tower stands firm against the shifting white wall of the fog, you enter the infinite respiratory cycle of the Pacific. This is the sound of the earth at its most fundamental, a deep and liquid respiration that moves millions of tons of water with every cycle. You listen to the way the swells approach the shore, not as individual waves, but as a single, unified movement of energy. The water rises against the black basalt rocks, a slow and silent climb, and then it pauses at the peak of its reach before sliding back down into the depths. This pause is the moment you inhabit now, the tiny, crystalline second of perfect balance where nothing is moving, nothing is changing, and nothing is required of you. You focus your attention on the microgeology of the shoreline pebbles. Beneath the roar of the surf, there is a smaller, more intimate sound, the sound of billions of tiny stones rolling over one another as the water retreats. This is the clatter of the tide, a delicate musical sound like 1,000 glass marbles being shifted in a silk bag. Each stone has its own frequency, its own history of being tumbled by the ocean for a century until its edges have become as smooth as a teardrop. You imagine the weight of these stones, the cool, wet density of them as they settle into the sand. You feel that same density in your own limbs, a heavy, pleasant sinking into the mattress, as if you too are being settled by the gentle hand of the tide. The atmospheric pressure of the night is now at its peak, a thick and comforting weight that feels like a heavy wool blanket draped over the entire coast. This pressure helps to still the air, dampening the sounds of the forest and the distant mountains until the world feels as small and as quiet as a room lit by a single candle. You think about the structure of the fog droplets again, how they are now coalescing on the glass of the lantern room. They form small, clear rivers that slide down the panes, distorting the amber light into beautiful, abstract patterns of gold and shadow. You watch a single drop as it travels down the glass, moving in small, sudden jerks, pausing to merge with other drops until it becomes heavy enough to fall. This is the only pace that matters now, the pace of a falling drop, the pace of the slow-turning lens, the pace of the deep, subterranean earth. Inside your mind, the lighthouse of the subconscious continues to rotate. Its beam is not made of light, but of memory and peace. It sweeps across the landscapes of your life, illuminating only the quietest moments. A still morning on a lake, the sound of snow falling in a forest, the warmth of a sun-drenched window in winter. As the beam passes over these memories, they glow with a soft, ethereal light before fading back into the protective darkness. You are not thinking about these things so much as you are feeling them, a series of warm, sensory impressions that tell you that your story is complete, your journey is finished, and your rest is earned. The scent of the sea salt and moss has now permeated the very stone of the tower. It is a scent that bypasses the logical brain and speaks directly to the ancient, instinctive parts of your being. It tells you that the world is old, that the cycles of the night are reliable, and that you are safe. You think about the molecular stillness of the iron in the spiral staircase, how the atoms are vibrating at their lowest possible frequency in the cool midnight air. You adopt this same molecular calm. Your heart rate has found its resting rhythm, a slow and steady beat that mimics the tock of the lighthouse clock. Your lungs move with the effortless grace of the kelp fronds in the water below. You are a masterpiece of relaxation, a living embodiment of the coast's enduring peace. The final ebb has left the beach exposed in its entirety. The black sand is a vast, mirror-like expanse that reflects the faint, diffused glow of the lighthouse through the fog. It is a world of silver and shadow, a landscape that exists only for a few hours before the water returns to claim it. You imagine walking out onto that sand, your feet leaving no prints on the firm, wet surface. You are walking toward the horizon, moving through the fog like a ghost, toward a place where the sound of the ocean and the sound of the forest become one single, infinite drone. This is the brown noise of the universe, the frequency that existed before the first star was born and will exist after the last one fades. It is the sound of total, absolute sleep. The lighthouse beacon gives a final, soft pulse in the distance of your mind. The gears have become silent. The lens has become still. The fog has closed the last window to the world. There is only the dark, the warmth, and the infinite, supporting weight of the night. You have arrived. Stay. 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 Asleep.